The other area that is of real concern, and that is the area that we have the most complaint about, is the issue of closed meetings. And a closed meeting, you can go into a closed meeting if necessary to address certain statutory issues. I'm going to tell you right now, in looking at your agenda, you are not properly going into closed session. You cannot go, you have to go into a closed meeting from an open meeting. So you can't have a closed meeting
Prior to
or after, because you have to go into a closed meeting by motion, and the motion has to be specific as to statutory reasons for the motion. There has to be a roll call vote, and then you can go into the closed meeting. And having them on the other end of the day also doesn't work, because you have to come out of a closed meeting to have a motion to adjourn, and then adjourn.
So the practice has been to announce the closed session at the end of the prior open session with a roll call vote. That gap in time frustrates what you just described, or does it have, do we actually have to have the contemporaneous, the same meeting has to have a closed session within
Yes.
confines?
Yeah, if you have two separate meetings, you cannot adjourn one meeting while in a closed session. The closed session can take place anytime. You don't have to notice of a closed session in case it is something that just comes up. I tell people you really shouldn't plan on having a closed session, because the statutory reasons for having a closed meeting are so narrowly drawn that it would be very rare for any one public body to need to do that on a month-to-month basis in a regular meeting. And I don't have an agenda for what you talk about in your meetings, but I can tell you right now that you have to keep good records, and the reason that most people go into a closed session is to deal with the character or professional competence of an individual, not personnel. I'll tell you right now, personnel is a broad category, and it doesn't deal with individuals. You have to be dealing with a specific individual person. It can be several individual persons, but you don't go into a closed meeting to discuss personnel policy or anything that should be done in an open meeting. You cannot discuss. We can discuss litigation with your attorney, but it has to be current or reasonably imminent. By reasonably imminent, it means, gosh, I just got a phone call and so-and-so says, I'm going to the courthouse to sue you. And so that's the kind of thing you can do. If you have collective bargaining issues, you can deal with those in a closed meeting. Again, you make the motion and you close the meeting to discuss collective bargaining issues. When you go to that meeting, that's all you discuss. And then you come into the meeting as a whole, the open meeting, and you make a motion and you take your votes.
So would it be better for us, kind of going off of Todd's question in terms of changing, is to come in here, do our open meeting, open our meeting, go into closed session, then come back out here?
Yeah, if you feel the need that you have to have a closed meeting. But I would be very concerned, like I say, if you regularly, I discussed this with county commissions and boards from Tooele to Vernal, Logan to Tickaboo. And it's the same for everyone. One of the things that people have the hardest time not talking about in a closed meeting is legislation. Legislation is not on the list, folks. If you're going to discuss legislation or think it's something you're going to support or ask to have done, you do that in an open meeting. And like I say, yeah.
So go ahead and finish that thought. I got a question.
Okay, and also you have appointed powers. If you're filling a position that is open on the board itself or an elected position, you cannot interview that person in a closed meeting. You have to interview that person in an open session and vote on that meeting. If you're going to hire someone who's not an elected person, and you want to interview them in a closed meeting, you can do so. You can discuss the character and professional competence of that individual, but you come out and you make your motions and you do your vote in an open session.
So can I do a variation on that?
Like,
So there are employees or individuals who are recommended for hire and their information is brought to the board. So you have specific names, specific job titles. They're being hired or recommended into hiring. We've, as a practice, have had those discussions in closed session.
yes, that's
Is that
perfectly appropriate.
Okay.
Because you're talking about individuals, not talking about, personnel as a whole, and you're not talking about an elected official.
Okay.
So those are things that are perfectly appropriate. That's one of the reasons why it's in there.
Likewise property?
Pardon me?
Likewise property?
You can talk about the buying and selling of property as long as the issue, it goes to the issue of if our discussion would make it impossible for us to acquire this property at a fair market value, then then they want you to talk about it. You don't have to, but you have to be look at the issues and the wording of the statute, and it needs to comply with all of the words and the exceptions for having requiring an open meeting. When you close for the purpose of having a discussion about, oh, I'm sorry.
Okay, so we have personnel issues that relate directly to one or two employees that we are brought up to speed in a closed meeting.
Mhm.
And I guess unfortunately for us, that happens more frequently than we would like, but that is appropriate.
It is, but if you're going to take action on
Yeah.
those individuals,
Never.
that has to come
Never.
out here.
Okay, yeah, never, okay.
Okay, because we're talking about specific individuals, named individuals, and if you're talking about their character and competence or their physical competence also, that's perfectly appropriate for that meeting. When you have that type of a closed session, you are not required to report it or take minutes. What is required is that the person who conducts the meeting, the chairman usually, needs to sign an affidavit that is the only subject that was discussed in that meeting is the character and competence of an individual, and that goes in your record. Okay. So there shouldn't be minutes or a recording of that particular kind of meeting. And you'd never have a closed meeting. If you don't want a closed meeting, please don't think that you have to do that. We have had meetings challenged, and I'm going to tell you that unfortunately, every challenge one I have had has been a school board. Because people think because other things were discussed.
And this is about closed session.
This is in the closed session. So someone can challenge a closed meeting in the courts. And if they take it to court, what the judge will do is the judge will look at the record and see what happened in the closed meeting. If they find that it was illegally closed or things that were discussed in the meeting go outside the scope of the reason it was closed, then the judge can order that those parts that go beyond what the meeting was closed for be released. And if they find that nothing untoward happened, that the only thing that was discussed was the character and competence of, Principal Joe, then that's fine. The judge will say, I dismiss this action, there's nothing untoward in this action, that's what's gonna happen.
Sorry, I have another question.
Okay.
We oversee the hiring, firing superintendent and the business administrator. So when we are doing their job performance reviews, we close for that. Is that appropriate?
If you're talking about character and competence, yes. If you're talking about other things that may go beyond those things, you might have to do part of it in an open meeting.
So competence, of course, character's character.
Yeah.
But competence would be if I'd met my goals,
Yeah,
and then metrics of that,
okay.
correct?
I just want it could be, yeah. So please don't, be careful about closing meetings, like I say. People want to see what the business that you're doing. Again, charter schools have their own set of rules. Training has to be done on an annual basis. Okay, and then we have remedies and enforcement. There can be an action filed in the district court in the state of Utah to void your actions. If it involves bonds, notes, or other evidences of indebtedness, a person would have to file that action within 30 days. And if it were something else, say you closed a meeting and you took an action in error that you shouldn't have done, or if you have something down as a discussion item and you take action on it, or a person comes in from the outside and says, I really want you to do this, and everybody says, that's a good idea. Let's take a motion and deal with it. Now, those things can be challenged in the courts. And they are voidable. Generally speaking, who takes action? The Attorney General's office, the county attorneys. Any party who has been denied any right during the meeting can take an action, and the judge can order compliance. And if someone succeeds in their suit, they will receive their attorney's fees. One of the most important things is that once y'all are trained, you have to know that there's a criminal penalty for violating the closed meeting law. It is a Class B misdemeanor. So if you knowingly or unintentionally close a meeting that shouldn't be closed, or encourage someone to close a meeting that shouldn't be closed, you could be prosecuted. I have yet to have that pleasure of prosecuting anybody. And I think if you act in accordance with your attorney's advice, that you should in fact be fined. There's just not a whole lot of legal room. Again, I don't recall any complaints about Park City School District Board. So you're doing most of everything right. You make some changes, like I say, with your closed meeting policies and the way you handle that. And thank you for your service and willingness to take on this important responsibility.